Standing, yeah.
Yeah, you want to talk about Alright, we got Andrew to go.
Well, not originally, the tiniest of tiny villages. Good job. Excuse me. Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
You're allowed to have devices up here.
Yeah. Of the reunion.
Having some there,
Stuff on the street.
it's just because the lights, yeah. Squeeze, please. Come closer, don't be
I'm not
Careful,
yeah,
careful.
no, it's fine, it's fine. Okay. No. Okay, just one more. And hopefully, social media. Exactly.
Better be on Twitter.
Second. Perfect. Thank you very much.
See you on
No, I'm on. Yeah. Sarah, do you want to sit next to me because you're after me, and we let.
Saturday, I just heard about a nice story about Island in the Mine.
Yeah.
And it was the first time the
Yes.
and the premier was saying that they didn't know that the Mine was which is actually something. Bring the company.
The 4.0. Yeah. Yeah, but would you call it 4.0?
Yes. That's recommended.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
And that's the situation that I feel. I'm giving you what's worse. You want to take the lead out.
So weird.
Okay, good morning. You're all very welcome. Thanks very much for coming along this morning to the latest in the CitA Digital Breakfast Briefing Series here in the Royal College of Physicians. This morning's event is the stakeholder support is the Construction Industry Federation. My name is Sean Downey. I'm Director of Specialist Contracting and also Secretary for our Construction 4.0 subcommittee in CIF, leading the digital transition for construction companies. So you're all very welcome, and I hope you're going to enjoy this morning's event. Just to give you a brief rundown, you'll have seen the agenda, but first speaker this morning I'm going to introduce is the President of CIF, the current President of CIF, Dominic Doherty. Dominic is originally by background a quantity surveyor and a joint managing director of John Flanagan Developments from Tullamore in the Midlands. So he'll have his own story and he'll give you a very good idea of really where the industry is at the minute and our approach to how we're going to engage in the transition. Then I'll introduce Georgina Quigley from ACB Group. ACB Group are a tier 1, tier 2 subcontractor, depending on which client you're talking to. But they've got a really interesting story on where they are in terms of their digital journey, how they're approaching that, and how they see it perhaps as an opportunity as opposed to a barrier to actually trade, and how they've approached it as a company to try and maximise the benefit for themselves and also for their client base. Then I'll introduce Sarah Mertz, who's come all the way from Berlin. Sarah is here to tell us really about the different approach in Germany at the minute to one of the solutions that we're perhaps looking for, which is an open BIM qualification. The introductory level, the generic type of level of course that's going to, I suppose, convert the masses to the language and the structure and perhaps point people towards where they need to go next for their further learnings. So without further ado, I'll introduce Dominic Doherty to the stand. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, I'm delighted to be here this morning and to present at the latest CitA Digital Transition Series breakfast. And CIF are very pleased to support the great work that CitA has been doing over the last 15 years. I believe we are standing on the verge of a new future for the Irish construction industry. In the past 3 years, the industry has strongly recovered in most areas. There are still pockets of recession within some sectors and within some of the regions. But I believe these issues can be resolved, particularly as the government has recently committed around 116 billion to capital investment in the National Development Plan. I want to talk for a few minutes about how the industry needs to adopt the wonderful sorts of technologies and processes we will see here today to ensure that this programme and the even more ambitious National Planning Framework and Project 2040 is delivered most effectively. It's the right conference to mention that it's the sectors of industry that most bought into BIM and technology that have seen the strongest recovery. It's my understanding that exports of construction exports and services increased fivefold over the recession. There is a strong correlation between the companies who drove this increase and their willingness to adopt technology. I think the government should be lauded for their commitment to increasing the adoption of BIM in the construction industry. They understand that more technology means more savings, more value for money, better delivery, less disputes, and most importantly, the competitiveness that tech-forward construction companies who can then go on to scale and reach export potential. On December the 7th, the National BIM Council published the first digital strategy for Ireland's construction industry titled A Roadmap to Digital Transition. That strategy envisages a sector that looks to achieve 20% reductions in cost, 20% reductions in programme, and 20% increase in construction exports to 2021. I believe we can surpass this ambition with the right support for industry to overcome significant barriers to adoption. The BIM roadmap is a good first step, but a wider roadmap to bring the industry towards Construction 4.0 will be required. I think that the government recognises this and we will be working with them over the coming years to drive modernisation across the industry. It's the right thing to do, and there's a great return to the state. I see technology as a key part of the solution to the boom-bust volatility in the industry and all the terrible knock-on effects of this on the economy and Irish society. By adopting technology, we can become globally competitive and develop more export markets for the Irish construction industry and for the Irish construction products and services. These export markets will provide a pressure valve for when the domestic economy dips, as it inevitably does, so tech can drive more exports as a key volatility dampening measure. But more than that, removing the extreme volatility in the industry so each of us can build a world-class construction industry here in Ireland. For the moment, the national narrative about the construction industry is mostly positive. Output and employment is up across all sectors. Government strategies such as Rebuilding Ireland, the National Development Plan, and the National Planning Framework are significant political and financial commitments that can underpin growth in construction up to 2040. We should see it as a transformative event for our industry, an opportunity for the Irish construction to take its place at the centre of the Irish economy and society, and a springboard to building an international reputation for the most innovative construction. This reputation must be built in a model that I call smart, sustainable growth. In this model, smart means technology-enabled growth, where more companies adapt technologies such as BIM. It also refers to deeper engagement between state, industry, and the research community to develop productive construction technologies and products. Sustainable means that the construction activity delivered helps support Ireland's climate change goals, the decarbonisation of society, and is of the highest quality. In addition, it's sustainable activity because relationships in the industry between contractors and subcontractors, and indeed public sector bodies, are based on long-term collaboration rather than short-term lowest cost considerations. Finally, growth. The growth I envisage sees the industry achieve 12% or so of GDP, and it is spread across the industry's subsectors in a relatively even manner. This growth should also see employment increase, including amongst the female population. And finally, this growth should be characterised by a significant increase in construction exports of products and services. To achieve smart, sustainable growth, the industry, government, and third-level research community must collaborate as they have never done before. The government will move in to develop a strategic research agenda, backed by funding to develop more competence in the techniques and technologies involved. We have the basic talent in this industry. We play a critical role in attracting and expanding FDI in Ireland. Because of our abilities, Ireland has 9 to 10 of the global pharma companies, the top 10 tech companies, 50% of the world's leading financial service companies. Our engagement with international clients has driven innovation in our specialist contractor subsector. Their demanding approach has seen specialist contractors embrace new technologies and practices such as BIM and Lean. As a result, this sector has grown consistently throughout the recession and has seen its exports grow rapidly and are now internationalized. For me, these companies are a working example of how investing in technology can improve productivity and competitiveness across industry in the coming decades. You are going to hear live project examples and case studies here this morning from existing CIF members who are already engaged in their own digital journey. Companies that have determined where their future lies and that have already identified the competitive advantage in making their decision to go digital. The CIF will continue to support its members to adopt innovative approaches and technology, so our industry keeps at the forefront of construction globally. We have recently established the Construction 4.0 Committee to ensure that these practices are embedded in all public and private sector contracts. I just want to give you a sense of the prize I'm talking about in smart, sustainable growth model I mentioned earlier. The global construction market will grow to $10.5 trillion by 2020. PwC estimates will grow by 80% to reach $15.5 trillion by 2030. Capturing percentage points of this level of growth could put the industry on a sustainable footing for decades. As part of the NDP announcement, there was a reference made to the Digital Disruption Fund. We would like to support this initiative undertaken by Enterprise Ireland, so far in leading the digital transition debate. We would also like to see a sustainable model put in place so that the construction sector can have its own centre of excellence like other industry sectors do. In 2018, we hope to see the establishment of a centre of excellence for construction with active engagement from all industry stakeholders. The roadmap has been drawn up. Now we need to have the leadership and management team to put it in place to drive towards that goal. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Dominic. As you can see, we're here talking in the digital, you can come ahead if you want to swap out. As you can see, we're here talking in the digital context, but we're here as part of a much wider, broader context, obviously, when we're talking about the whole National Development Plan, the National Planning Framework, and even in the context of just the National BIM Council's roadmap to digital transition. But the prize is obvious. You can see also from one of the major case studies that we've got in the second part of this morning's session, and also from the evidence of our specialist subsectors, that a lot of our companies have already taken advantage of digital. They've taken advantage of BIM, they've taken advantage of Lean, and that's allowed them to export their services into other jurisdictions, simply because of the fact that they've got competitive advantage of being far smarter operations. I had a visit here 2 weeks ago from a group of 40 different electrical contractors. The entire federation of electrical contractors from Finland came to visit Ireland. They were here on a 5-day trip, and they wanted to go and visit one of our projects. So I took them out to one of the projects. Mercury Engineering were very kind. They actually managed to get us into the management suite of a very highly sensitive FDA project. And the Finnish companies could not believe the level of technology that was being employed, the way that the project was being ran. They could not believe the systematic operation. And the reality is, our companies, that company, I know Frank Matthews is here from Mercury, they're actually exporting their services into Finland and operating in that country, and those electrical contractors can't even compete at that level, simply because of the fact that the guys are taking the system, their way of working, and this type of technology and these processes, the whole culture across to Finland, the rest of Scandinavian countries, the rest of the Benelux. So the evidence is very clear. Next speaker now, I've already introduced, is Georgina Quigley from ACB Group. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Georgina Quigley, and I'm CEO with ACB Group Design and Construct. Thank you to CitA and CIF for inviting me here to speak. I'm going to speak to you this morning about a specialist subcontractor's view of digital construction, and we view digital construction as a win-win. Just for context, this is who we are, this is what we do. This is just a view of the world from a specialist external envelope contractor such as ACB. So for ACB Group, our vision is to change once and benefit many times. Our mission is a win-win approach to design and construct. And our goal is to do more, for less, and with less. And so that's broadly our approach to digital construction. How will we know whether we've succeeded with this vision and this mission? Well, the NBC tell us that we will see a 20% increase in production export, we'll see a 20% reduction in programme, and we'll see a 20% reduction in capital expenditure. So these are the high-level benchmarks that we're benchmarking our success or our measures for success. We've developed our own infograph here for digital for a specialist contractor versus the traditional method. And you see that we are measuring a 30% faster time on site, 33% saving in project costs, 50% increase in build quality because of the clarity and control that we can get from 3D design, 50% greater flexibility in terms of change management, and 25% safer sites. So this is true measures within our business that we're tracking and measuring our digital transition to. So the challenges to digital transition, and the challenges I believe for everybody in the industry to digital transition, are number one is team culture and behaviours. Number two, the cost, or the perceived cost, the actual cost associated with the transition to digital technologies. And the third one is the lack of client appetite. And so I'm going to look into each of these areas. So in terms of team culture and behaviours, we have a team that are already delivering excellence. And so absolutely, our team are excellent at what we do. Our technical design is fantastic, and our delivery of projects is excellent. So what's the problem? Well, we need more of it. And so for me, the behaviour towards this is digital is not by somebody else for you, and it's not by you for somebody else. It's by you for you. And you need to start taking, we all need to start taking ownership, accountability and responsibility for this digital transition. It isn't somebody else's problem. It's very much everybody in the construction sector needs to take ownership. And that's where we introduce this above and below the line thinking. So we can all say, well, the government are not doing enough, or the educators are not doing enough, and we can all make excuses, well, the client doesn't want it, or we can make lots and lots of excuses and reasons why we shouldn't move to digital. We encourage our team to think above the line and to take ownership and be responsible for their transition to digital. And as Abraham Lincoln says, you cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. So when we were introducing complex change, and we see this in lots of the presentations presented on digital construction, but I find this really good in our business to keep reflecting back. And so we started our journey 2 years ago, and there are frustrating times. And when you look back at this, you think, well, hold on a second. I have no incentive put into place here. So how could I expect these people to really take ownership of this? Or I might find that, well, hold on a second. The people that I'm targeting here don't have the necessary skills. So when you look at each of these building blocks, and if you really take yourself back every time you pilot a project, and we have done lots of false starts, and the benefit of us making the false starts is that nobody else should have to make them. So we're willing to share our ideas and the mistakes and false starts that we made. Now, it's never really a mistake because it's always a learning, so it's always an opportunity for improvement. And I find to reflect back on this, and I have it up on the wall in my office, to say, you know, hold on a second, we're not equal in success on this initiative just yet. What have we missed? And I reflect back on each of these. And more often than not, I find that I'm missing a building block. And if I reflect and get back to that building block and say, look, what incentive have I put in place? So we set out objectives at the beginning of the year, which we saw our 30% at the beginning. We sit with our team and we say, this is our digital transition. This belongs to you. The incentive at the end of the year is we all do annual reviews, and we'll all be rewarded. We will all be rewarded. The business will be rewarded, and you as an individual will be rewarded based on our success for digital transition. And so I find this, while it's available out there, a really good just sounding board. Our team is, as I say, already delivering excellence. And the issue is not that they are not excellent at what they do. We need more of it. We need them to do more. Our clients need increased productivity to deliver more excellent projects. And so why is this a problem? So this is great, isn't it? Except there is a problem. We have a massive skills gap. We have labour shortage, and we have tighter programs. And so we need to address this by allowing the digital technologies to do some of the tasks that we would traditionally have done in a more laborious approach. And so really the message from this is the biggest win for our clients is that we can deliver more projects for them in the same time with the same resources without increasing construction costs. And that's really all that it's about. There's nobody saying you're not already excellent at what we're doing. We just need to do more of it. And so we've got to get smarter. And so very much in the business, and this is something that everybody's experiencing, we're so busy, and we are so busy, and there is a big upturn in the economy, and we are so busy, but we're too busy to improve. And so this is a really good image. you know, he's been offered the round wheels and he's, hold on, I'm too busy to even think about round wheels right at the minute. You know, who's going to do the work while I'm putting on the round wheels? So we're all up against this, and it's just maybe to get people's behaviours and their mindsets into this is your problem, and you need to look around because there's lots of wonderful opportunities for creating lean digital processes that can take away the mundane tasks that will allow you to be even better at delivering projects. So that's the behaviour, the team, and the culture barriers that we're experiencing, and I believe the industry is experiencing. The next barrier for us as a SME, and by the way, 95% of the construction sector are SMEs, is the cost. We simply can't afford to transition. And so for me, the message is here, you simply can't afford not to transition to digital construction. Now, again, the cost of hardware and software, we have done all of this, so learn from mistakes that we have made. So when we set on the journey 2 years ago, we needed high-powered machines and we had to replace machines. So our design team, designing in 3D Revit, had to have high-powered machines. So we upped the machines, we upped the servers, we bought licenses, and we scaled up. Now, as we're pushing digital construction out through our business, we find now that our commercial team need high-powered machines to be able to navigate and tender for models. We find that our project team now need high-powered machines. And so it is becoming difficult, and it is becoming very costly. And I'm glad to say that with cloud workspace solutions, which is just a new journey that we're on, so again, a learning that we're delighted to share, it's fantastic. They're scalable, and you pay per use. So you can have the top-notch high-powered machine in a workspace for so many of your users, and the not so high powered, and basically operate off a dumb terminal, and you pay per use, and you pay so much more on operational cost than having to have the capex up front, and so you're paying as you go, and so you can see, you can capture and much easily justify your spend. And then you have the cost of upskilling and training, and yes, there is the cost associated, but before too long you will be reaping the rewards. So for us, what did we do in our business? So we struggled with that. I'm too busy to change, I'm too busy to improve, and all that good stuff. Digital is fantastic. Tell me when it's done. You know, and it just doesn't work. It's by the people, for the people. It's very much you need to do it for yourself. And so we hired a BIM lead, Louise Kelly. Louise had been working in the UK and is passionate about digital construction, and we're delighted that we got Louise on our team. And that just helped us to benchmark and to give our team a flavour of what this really does look like and what it really does mean. You know, we have people on our team, in our design team, that are 25 years developing in CAD, you know, and it's worked for 25 years. Leave me alone. And so it's great to bring somebody in. So the suggestion is to hire a leader, you know, somebody with the knowledge, somebody with the skills. That will lead your team and let them get a visual on what it looks like. And I'm glad to say now that that has been a great success for us. We then reflected on our recruitment process, and we said from now on, anybody that comes into our business must be digitally literate. And that's not in terms of using Word or Excel or any of that. They must understand digital construction. So understand what BIM process is, understand BIM design, understand BIM processes, understand models and how to navigate. So if you're coming in to estimate on jobs, understand how to take your bill of quantities off a model. Now I know we have a journey to go in terms of taking quantities off a model, but we could take the macro quantities, you know, and then you've created leverage. So that was just another strategy that we went. And the last one is leverage of all the hard work that's already done. CitA, CIF, BIM Ireland, National BIM Council have done tremendous work. So you haven't had to do the feasibility and the scoping and the will it work and the convincing. It's all done. These guys have done a huge amount of work. There's a huge amount of resources. So leverage off it. The work is really, really, a lot of work is done. And in terms of training, Sarah's talking about an open BIM certificate, which is fantastic. For our guys that are 25 years designing, these guys are excellent at what we do. We categorically need them. We can't afford to sidestep them. So how are we going to bring them in? Well, to send them into an educational institute where you have students coming up through who have not been out in the real world is difficult. And what the open BIM certificate will be fantastic because that's what it's targeted at. It's targeted at the people, the technical experts like we have, who understand the technical design, have all the knowledge, but are just struggling with that digital transition. So that would be fantastic for us. And the next barrier that we have identified is the lack of client appetite. And there's a perception out there with the clients that we have spoken to, I'm not saying all clients, but certainly the clients that we've spoken to, that we will pay 3 times for BIM. And why are we having to pay extra? And in fact, 3 times extra for BIM. And we're saying, no, you won't. In fact, you're going to save 3 times with the use of digital construction. Now, 3 times, 10 times, you know. So the client says, I will be paying for your staff to train on the BIM process while on my job. Well, that's not true. We, the specialist contractor, will have we will have all of the training and we'll be skilled on the BIM process. The client is saying the specialist contractor will keep all the efficiencies in their own pocket. So there's a bit of a trust issue there. You know, well, yeah, that's great, but you're the biggest winner here. And that's simply not true in a BIM, in a 3D world, because of the visualization and the transparency that a BIM process will give you, that all of the operational efficiencies in terms of simplified collaboration and visualization, along with construction efficiencies, will be realised by all parties. So it's very much a win-win. It's very transparent, very open, and there isn't anywhere to pocket the advantages. Everybody gains, everybody wins. The client says, I'll be paying extra to have my project information delivered to meet BIM standards. So we're saying, absolutely not. That is just the way that we operate. We deliver BIM information and BIM collaboration. It's just what we do, producing the information right first time. And if we can get that message across to our clients, I think the appetite, certainly from our clients' perspective, will increase. And just in terms of who am I talking about in terms of our clients? Well, our clients are designers, the main client, and our contractors. And the wins for contractors, for example, are cost certainty, program certainty, and transparency. And so that brings trust and shared risk, shared reward, very much an open process. For the client, the visualization of design is just invaluable. They have digital asset info in the model, so their FM now becomes much more streamlined, and they have life cycle costs of their building. We have impact modelling, design optimization, rapid iteration with our designers. And while rapid iteration is not a new thing, it actually is really rapid now, and so we can really test and measure the performance of the building before it actually goes to be built. So digital construction is a win-win. And what does digital construction mean for us? Well, it's clash detection, it's verification, it's building information modelling, it's collaboration with our fire protection, so making sure that it's in the right place and giving the visual on it and giving the confidence to our client. It's collaboration with our structural steel, with our curtain walling, with our mech and elect, and it's just about clarity, and transparency. And that gives you control, and that increases your quality of output. So that's really just a view on who are these clients that I'm talking about. So digital wins, as promised by the MBC, are these 20% decrease, 20% increase, 20% decrease. And how are we, from our perspective, a specialist contractor, how do we think that we can all benefit and that we can all get this true win-win? Well, we believe if you open up the design process, now I know that there's contractual and there's lots of other reasons that it's difficult right now, but broadly speaking, if we can open up the design process, engage the technical designers like us and lots like us, and I mean lots like us, we all need to be on this journey because there's little point in only one person believing and delivering digital construction, or one team or one group. We need everybody on the journey. So if we open up the design process with early engagement, we do have the technical knowledge and we are more than willing to share it. So allow us in early design engagement and create leverage of that technical expertise that we have. There's no value in creating a parallel universe traditionally, maybe in standards you would have had parallel universes where you took out the manual and the standards when the auditor was coming and dusted them off and you got through your audit. Very much this is in your business, making a true difference within your business. We're saying enjoy the benefits of impact modelling, explore multiple approaches with rapid iteration. So if we open up the whole process and empower your supply chain, so engage with specialist contractors to develop the BIM deliveries for the project. Engage earlier on. Shared risk and shared reward. So that's what digital construction does. It's a rising tide that brings all ships. It's not like there's one winner out of this. Everybody's winning. And this is a graphic that's used lots and lots and lots, but it's really, really powerful. And you see from early engagement here, if you look at the BIM workflow, early engagement allows you the ability to impact cost and performance the most. Whereas traditionally, we would be getting engaged here, technical design, and you see that the cost of change is enormous. So it's just a really nice and really valuable piece of information to keep. So this is your journey of construction along the bottom of cost and effect. And so usually, as I say, we will be involved much later on. This piece here, when the cost of change gets really high. And it's just, you know, if we really believe that early engagement with specialist designers like ourselves can really add value, when we can add the most value, when cost and performance can be impacted the most, and not so late on, when it's just so expensive to make changes when you're out on site. So that's just a handy little. And again, another BIM benefits, and I know everybody's got percentages coming out of their eyeballs, but greater cost predictability, 78% greater cost predictability, 85% improved schedule, 85% less hours, 92% optimized design, and 98% better understanding. And this is the raw heavy construction. So I suppose what's not to like, really? There's everything in this to like. So to wrap up, I have we have top 10 tips to enable digital transition in your organization. Take responsibility and ownership. Don't kick it around anymore. It's each and every individual's responsibility. Get the knowledge. We're in the information age. Equip yourself with information. The more information you have, the better you can manage it, the more valuable you are as a resource, as a business. So get the information, get the knowledge, and get yourself upskilled. Create leverage using the resources already available. As I said, there's tremendous work done by CitA and by BIM Ireland and Link Construction Ireland and CIF. Use it, it's there. Somebody else has already done the work. You don't have to. Make the digital decision while it's still yours. Very soon, it's not going to be your choice anymore. And it's always nice to be in control of your decision, so make the digital decision while you still can. Understand the common goals of digitization. And really, it's delivering more and better with less. Empower your construction supply chain with collaborative decisions. So that's our early engagement. Have a digital vision. As exciting as it may be, have a vision so that people know what they're aiming towards. Develop a digital strategy. Believe in a win-win. So believe in shared risk and reward. So it's not like anybody's out there to try and pocket it all for themselves. This is a win-win for everybody. And trust. Trust collaboration. Trust the BIM process. It works. It's a fantastic opportunity. And so allow it into your business. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant, that was great. Thanks very much, Georgina. I think the greatest advantage in having companies that we know that have already made their own, they've already started their own transition, and we're going to hear from BAM just after the Q&A break, is the fact that we can get real stories. And what's great is, especially as well, whenever you've got companies that are coming up here that are not afraid to share, you're getting really strong concept, really strong indicators there about the potential metrics that are available for improvement. But also, even just the top, that takeaway is really a great snapshot for people to consider where they start their own journey. And that's really important, even if that's not something for you specifically, if you can share that message with other companies, other contractors that you're dealing with, if you can pass that message around, that there are really good open stories available that with simple enough tasks that people can undertake to try and make their own start. So next speaker now, just to close off this part of the session, is Sarah Mertz, and Sarah's come from Dublin. Okay, thank you.
Give me a second. Good morning. Thank you. Good morning also from my side. Thank you for having me here. I'd like to talk with you about how are we able to empower the digital sector into digital transformation, construction sector, of course. And in my opinion, is education, is training, is the worldwide certification, open BIM certification, the way we need to go. Who am I? My name is Sarah Merz. I am from Berlin, Germany, and I'm head of education center for a company named Deubim. My background is quite mixed. I'm architect, civil engineer, economist. I'm able to have good discussions with myself. And in 2011, I got the great chance, I got a scholarship for Stanford University. Means in 2011, I got my first contact with building information modeling. And meanwhile, in my job as head of education center, I'm a member of several committees of VDI. This is the Association of German Engineers, committees of Building Smart Germany, and furthermore, I'm German representative in the working group in professional certification. Talking about Deubim, who are we? We are a company located in Berlin and Düsseldorf, Germany, and our vision is we would like to help, we would like to support the construction sector on the way to digital transformation. By this, we are having several departments, education and training. This is literally me and my colleagues. I have colleagues consulting companies, organizations on their way to getting more and more digital. And we are having our architects and general planners from Postsphere doing BIM in the application work. But enough from me, enough from the company. First, I'd like to start with a question, how digital are we today? And I was always wondering when talking about digitalization, I got the feeling some people are feeling it came overnight. And I was wondering, why are they feeling that way? No, it didn't. To me, it was normal. And maybe still it's not 100% wrong. And this is why I would like to ask you a question. I just learned over the weekend that hurling and Gaelic football is bigger here. Still, I'm from Germany, I'm talking about football, the normal one for me. Do you remember the World Cup 2006? We had the great pleasure in Germany to host that event, and Italy won in the end. Still, question to the audience, do you remember which was the mobile app you used most during that World Cup? What is? Most answers are like, it's maybe a betting platform or football results, maybe it's a delivery or public transport, but actually no, 2008, it was when mobile apps like we know them, like we use them today, were started. So it is only 10 years ago we started with mobile apps, and I'm sorry, within those 10 years, lots changed. I mean, my alarm is my mobile, I'm looking up public transport, I'm buying tickets with my mobile, I'm ordering food, I'm paying with my mobile. So within 10 years, so much changed, and I wonder why aren't we able, or why weren't we able to bring this digital life also into our working world? Because obviously there are some advantages. But when talking about new developments, new methods, specifically in our case, digital transformation, digital transition, it's always necessary to know the status quo, because we first need to know where are we standing so we know where can we go to. And if we have a look at the digitization index, it's actually a German chart. Sorry, wild clicking. Then we can see that the construction sector got quite of a kind of a digital backlog. Only scientific and technical service are behind us. So when comparing with the other industries, we can see that we are a bit behind. And furthermore, there is something else. There's a big productivity gap. Because looking at that chart shows us that even our productivity improvement did not even increase, but rather decreased, especially when we compare it to the manufacturing industry. So even when our economy concerning construction is quite active right now, it's busy. I just heard it's the same in Ireland as it is in Germany. We need to ask ourselves, why do we see that gap at this space? Because right now, while a high number of industry sector is turning into a more and more digital working world, we are facing a rather slow and deferred transformation towards digitization. And this is, again, we need to ask us, why are we doing so? And at least in Germany, new developments in the construction sector often meet a reserve. In Germany, there are about 2.5 million people in the planning, constructing, and operating sector, but more than 80% of them are working in companies with less than 7 employees. And it's very specialized, it's very fragmented. And when it came to BIM in Germany, in the beginning, it was like, do we really need this? Do we really need to make a change? Because it's always, as Georgina said before, it's change management. Are there maybe some costs coming? Software, education, training? Is BIM maybe just a flash in the pan? So in Germany we were waiting. And also our government was waiting. But then we were watching other countries and other countries' industries, like the Nordics, for example, becoming more and more digital in the construction industry. And suddenly something happened in Germany. Maybe you heard of German angst. It's our fear of missing something. Are we missing something? Are we maybe too late? And suddenly there came an uproar, and the uproar came from bottom up. It was the industry in Germany who said, oh, we need to get more digital. And after that, the government followed. So it's not like in the UK where government started, let's get more digital, and then industry followed. In Germany, it was like, I heard, as it is in Ireland, it's otherwise around. So after a while, the government followed, and we got something you have as well. We got a roadmap, and I don't need to tell you a lot about digital roadmaps. I've seen it here, I've seen it here. You got a quite impressive one, scheduled up to 2021. So this is ours. It doesn't look as nice as yours. I've already seen it. It was after the market was really, or industry, really screaming for getting more and more digital. It was our government of transport and infrastructure setting up that roadmap, 3 steps from 2015 to 2020, starting with pilot projects, continuation of step 1's pilot projects, and from 2020 on widespread implementation. And these roadmaps are bringing me back to my topic, because inter alia, the ministry in Germany was requesting a verifiable proof of competence when working with BIM, and therefore a comparable and standardized certificate for everyone working with BIM. And everyone working with BIM means all parties within the construction sector. So actually, we had one little problem, because there weren't any deeper thoughts on how a certificate might look like, a certificate for everyone in the construction industry. So how can there be one certificate for everyone? Because building information modeling, as you know, is a method which concerns everyone along the value chain of planning, constructing, operating. If not today, then at least in very near future. And working with BIM is very complex, as many professions are working close together, whether it's architect, structural engineer, facility manager, supplier, contractor, MEP, name it. They all have to work closer together. And with BIM, it's not going to be less complex, as we have to go much deeper into communication, as we have to go much deeper into collaboration. We are modeling, and we are adding a big variety of information into models. We are taking off analysis, for example, for time cost estimations. And we want to take the model to the field, and we want to keep consistent information we generated into the operation phase. So it's getting more and more complex, so we still need a common language. We need to have a common knowledge base. We need to be able to talk to each other. I need to understand what the other ones want from me. You need to understand what I'm telling you concerning my BIM requirements. So this is a common knowledge base we simply need to have, and this concerns 2 things. It concerns openness and it concerns words. Openness, because we need to work over professions, over construction phases, over different softwares. and words because we need to have that same language. This same language might be a basic knowledge base we are having for working together. So how did it go on in Germany? As I mentioned, the government didn't say how a certificate might look like. We are having several relevant BIM committees in our country. DIN, it's like NSAI here, it's our national standardizer. We are having VDI, it's Association of German Engineers, also a standardizer. And there are Building Smart International and Building Smart Germany. Those four might be responsible for kind of certificate. And it was our engineers starting it. It was already in 2015, so before December 2015, our roadmap was published that the Association of German Engineers, VDI, founded several committees concerning building information modeling. One of them concerns BIM qualification. So several goals with it. First, it's representing the German opinion in the international standardization concerning qualifications. And the second is definition of the necessary knowledge base when working with building information modeling. But now, one very important question, are national solutions sufficient? This timeline shows when countries implemented building information modeling, and no, you cannot see Germany on that timeline. We still have time till 2020, as our roadmap is saying. But as I mentioned, openness. Openness does not only mean openness concerning national markets, softwares, collaboration. Furthermore, across borders, because national solutions are short-term thinking. Our world is globalized. We are working on international markets, and a consistent international language is necessary in form of a common knowledge base, at least concerning terminology, at least concerning processes. And for Ireland, I just read that Irish exports level per capita are 7 times higher than in the USA, so openness on international markets seem to be important for you as well. So the question whether international consistent BIM certification was necessary was also asked by Building Smart International. Building Smart International is a non-governmental, non-profit organization. They were founded for more than 20 years ago, and always the goal was a model-based planning, constructing, and operating 20 years ago already. And they were doing a market research beginning of 2016. Do we need an international consistent BIM certification? And more than 81% said yes. Because we need to think of, in the last years, more and more market, more and more industries, more and more countries get quicker and quicker towards digitization of the construction industry. Still, there are so many confusing moments when it comes to terminology. Is it LOG or LOD or LOI, LOIN, LOX? It comes to confusion when it comes to processes. So we said, yes, an international BIM certification is necessary, so we are able to work together, even across borders. Then it was beginning of 2016 that certification program of Building Smart International was founded. In the beginning, we were 8 experts from UK, Ireland, Germany, Switzerland, Spain, Korea, Japan, Canada, Norway. And we came together to develop and coordinate the certification program. Why did we do so? There were several requirements. I was talking about consistent terminology, consistent processes. We need to have a consistent understanding. And then we wanted to have verifiable, qualified BIM professionals. We wanted to be able to compare the competence level, whether you are an industry organization and are looking for new employees or whether you're looking for project partners. And for this, we wanted to create a global benchmark for the content of teaching. So we defined our scope of work concerning certification. Building Smart International went as a program initiator and point of contact for the national chapters. Your chapter, UK, Ireland, our chapter, for example, chapter of Germany. We wanted to develop minimum requirements on teaching content. We were 8 countries, and we wanted to find the lowest common denominator in teaching content all around the world. Japan, Canada, Ireland, Germany. We wanted to standardize that teaching content and that certification. And we wanted to have a dissemination of an open BIM certification. Open BIM, openness all the time, it has to go across softwares, across different solutions. And in the end, we said we would like to develop a testing tool so we are able to test employees, we want to test individuals for their BIM knowledge. Who's it aimed at? Individuals would like to learn, and I'm not talking about students, I'm not talking about the ones, the digital natives in their 20s. I'm talking about the people who are having already a big experience concerning planning, constructing, operating, but getting them more digital, not telling them everything is new, but look here, those are methods which are to improve our work. It's for industry organizations, as I said, hiring new people or looking for other project partners. We were aiming at training organizations and, of course, building smart chapters, because the chapters who want to implement a certification program get every support they want from Building Smart International. So it was September, October last year, we came up with a learning outcome framework. Learning outcome framework containing of 5 modules covering that lowest common denominator worldwide. What is it all about? For those who are having a certificate should know and should understand what is BIM, what is BIM-specific terminology, all those acronyms. They should recognize it, and they should know why is BIM needed. They should recognize the advantage of BIM, especially compared to traditional project delivery, just as Georgina showed in several charts. It's about understanding project information development cycle. How are we generating informations? How are we exchanging? How are we maintaining? What are we using it for? It's about recognizing the need for open solutions, and in the end also we should be able to identify our capability in working with BIM, our capability, so we need to know, or we know where we can improve, also the capability of project partners. So those were 5 modules, but I told you that the Association of German Engineers was working as well. And 2 months later, that draft standard of VDI came out. It's about BIM qualifications. What were we facing in Germany now? What could happen? There's Building Smart International, and they are delivering a BIM certificate. There's VDI, and maybe there's a BIM certificate coming. Maybe the work was doubled. In worst case, it's contradictory, something we definitely did not want to happen. What did we do? We put Building Smart Germany, our chapter, in between. So we were able to have a continuous comparison of the BSI, LOF, and the VDI standard. So Building Smart International published the Learning Outcome Framework, and all the content went into our national standard. But not only all the content, there's something else. Because I guess here several engineers, you know the Euro codes, EN 1990 to 1999. And as you know, every country got its specific. Euro codes are for Ireland and Germany, and Iceland and Spain and Finland and Malta. And every country got its specifics, and those specifics are a national annex. And we are specific in our construction industries. So we created a national module 6. It concerns national laws, it concerns national standards, contracts, etc. And with those now 6 modules, we went on and said, we need to have approval requirements. Germany is quite big in bureaucracy, so we created 10 different documents for approving training organizations concerning syllabus, trainers, the organizations themselves. Right now they are on their way to get translated into English, so all the other chapters are able to use them. And we went on. We are the provider of an online assessment tool. Every country has an access to an online assessment tool, the testing tool in the end, of course, and are the provider of the certificate. So all the work is almost done so far for having an individual qualification course. And we are the contact partner for the public authorities. So how long did it take us? Quite long, I have to say. You've seen it's many processes, many organizations, several loops. It was really iterative, but it was 18th of April when you officially launched the program in Germany and said, okay, you're going to get that certification started, because there are many certificates, I guess, here as well. There are certificates of software vendors, there are certificates of several universities, but there's not the one comparable certificate so far. And we said we are committing with Building Smart Germany. We want to officially launch the program of professional certification. Right now it's ongoing. The first course providers are going to get approved in Germany so far. And we estimate that by third quarter or fourth quarter this year, the first individuals can be certified. Still, we are talking about basic knowledge, the language course, the English A1 and A2 course. There's professional knowledge, and this is about coordinating, this is about managing, this is about the different users, the different professions we are having. And this needs to be developed as well, but we just got the basic knowledge, or the professional knowledge. We are still working. I don't think it's only Germany. I'm afraid it's hard to see. The big green dot is Canada. Those are the chapters of Building Smart who already said this program is what we would like to have. This program is something we want to implement in our countries. And at the same time as Germany is implementing a program, Norway is having it as well. Spain is following in a short time. Also Italy, Canada, Switzerland, Japan, South Korea, the little dots on the right, and also UK ISET, the professional certification program, the certificate which is for everyone along the value chain of planning, constructing, operating, is useful for us, that we can work with it. We are aiming to implement it. So we are having a standardized certificate for everyone, and we are having a worldwide solution. This. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you, Sarah. So now we move on to a Q&A session, guys, and I have a few questions myself, but if you want to, maybe we have roving mics for going around the room. So, Denny, you want to maybe just raise your hand? We have about 15 minutes. About 15 minutes for questions, just for this panel, then we're going to move on to the second half.
Sarah, this is a question about the Open BIM certification. What's the level of uptake and support that you have in Germany for that?
Effort?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Is it on? Yeah. Efforts were in the beginning quite high because we had to go several loops. But right now the market is really needing a certificate. So we put a lot of effort and a short time into it. Still, I don't think it's so easy to compare the effort we had with effort maybe other countries who are following are going to have, because we prepared the international LOF with all the 7 other countries. We are having the content, the learning outcome framework. We developed the testing questions, which are worldwide the same. We developed the requirements on course providers, and we are right now developing a body of knowledge, and it's not a German body of knowledge, it's a body of knowledge which refers to ISO standards such as 19650. So this is really a worldwide thing, and if countries are coming up, or chapters coming up and say, yeah, this is a good choice to go with this certification, they are getting every support they need. There's a financial plan, there is a marketing plan, there are all documents needed, and just about the maybe national module 6, if you think we are having so many national requirements, we want to create also a national Module 6.
And VDI, who are they?
Excuse me?
The VDI, who are they?
It's Association of German Engineers.
Right, so if we can translate that in an Irish context, in the delivery of this roadmap and the commitment to Open BIM, it would be necessary for the implementation team to persuade organisations like the RAI, Engineers Ireland, ACI, SCSI, to adopt and the BO, the book of knowledge that the Building International have developed. That's the challenge for us, isn't it?
It's great to have, but it's not needed. It was a discussion we had with our Association of German Engineers, and they said, okay, we believe this is the right solution, and the market is accepting that certification much more when we are in it as well. And this is why Building Smart and our VDI came together.
CitA again. Really interested in this program. I think what's interesting is that the Building Smart brand is synonymous with Open BIM. We all understand that now, and I think an Open BIM certification would be ideal, really. You mentioned yourself, though, that one of the issues at the moment is that there are so many certification programs on the go just now. But as an industry, we are now realising that's a good way to differentiate. You know, if you can have your employees, your skilled people, somehow certified in a BIM way, then you know that can be a differentiator. But I'm just wondering if I think it would be perfect if this certification could take over from this raft of all these other organisations that we have available. But there's just so many at the moment, and you know, I think the quicker you can get this available to the masses, the better. Absolutely, I think it sounds really good, really good. But how quickly are we talking about, though? You said the UK are obviously, you know, working with you, or it's getting looked to be rolled out in the UK. What's the timeline beyond Germany for other countries?
Norway is starting around the same time as we do. Spain wants to follow this year. Canada would like to follow this year. Italy got a new chapter. Still, they're very into that certification topic. Especially, as you said, there are many certificates, and I don't say the other certificates are not good, but it's nice to have a common one. It's about the preparation, and it's about how important you consider certification in your roadmap.
Just by way of information, last night, Sarah and I met with Germany North, the CEO of NSLI, and David Bennett, head official for our case, the UKI representative is looking after the certification. There's lots of work going on in the background to make sure that Ireland are in a position to hold the certificate out through the UKI Smart Track.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
It's absolutely UKI. There's no Ireland. I don't think we need to.
Basically, I just said it's a UK noise. Some nations obviously have to go on the second one, so it's just we are put in with the UK and it's a UK and Ireland one. Sometimes, just personally for myself, even my own organisation, sometimes it's UK and I, but it's really heavily focused UK. So sometimes having Ireland and having been part of it and absolutely contributing to it is very important. That's just a comment from myself.
Absolutely recognise. Yeah, sorry. Now, well, now, so I absolutely recognise that, and I want to change that. So we'll be UK and I, not just UK with a very small I.
I didn't think we were going to get on to Brexit matters, but just one thing briefly. Maybe I'll ask a question of Dominic here beside me. Is I suppose you started off talking about like the high level context in terms of where we are, but what support or driver do you think is needed now at a high level, maybe from industry, or at a high level in the industry? What do you think to take us to the next step?
I suppose we're all pretty familiar now at this stage with the announcement of the CSG, the Construction Sector Group, which was announced under the NDP. Now a lot of us have a focus on that, and I suppose for our particular focus here today, obviously, is around BIM. And the main reason around the CSG and the announcement of it is really, I suppose, the delivery of the 116 billion 10-year plan and the roadblocks that are potentially going to prevent the rollout of that plan. And for that plan to be delivered in the most productive and efficient way. And BIM obviously has a huge role to play in that. So very early in the play, the BIM should get onto the CSG agenda. Now, at the moment, they're constructing the formation of that particular group, and it all depends really how large a group it's going to be, or how it's going to be constructed. And if it's a very numerous membership, it could be very unwieldy. If it's a small focus group with subcommittees, I think it could be far more efficient. So therefore, yeah, I think it should be one of the things that should get onto the CSG agenda very quickly. We in CIF have had various discussions with government in relation to productivity and innovation within the industry. I think we all recognise we're pretty challenged in that area. And in fairness to the government, they have also recognised that we are challenged. However, if you look at the bottom line performance of our construction companies, you'll see that they're all pretty much challenged. And there was a report in the paper in the Sunday Independent only last Sunday, and if you read it, you would have seen that like the average bottom line performance of our large construction companies is 1 to 1.5%. So therefore, obviously, R&D and innovation is going to be very challenged in relation to investment into those areas. So what we are looking for from CIF, we're looking for a food equivalent of Chagas and or BIA in construction. And for those particular state agencies then to carry out the innovation in parallel to the industry. And once the innovation has matured, then they sell it back into industry. And I think that's an area well worth kind of exploring.
Yeah, hi Dan. I'd like to congratulate Georgina on a great presentation, and a question for her. How to unlock that early design, early involvement to get the real value out of BIM by reducing the overall total cost of construction? What, in your opinion, actually needs to be done differently in the way procurement is done? We're talking about government. Interestingly, government is the main target for most of disputes that go to court. And they have mad procurement rules where they'll keep going back to the same people who brought them to court, for example. How can that be changed, or is that part of it?
Yeah, definitely part of it. The way that our contracts, so the traditional form of contract, doesn't allow for BIM or for digital construction. Now, I know that the CIF are working on some realignment of contracts. So the contracts themselves don't lend themselves to early engagement from us, the people who have the technical knowledge. So traditionally, the building is design intent, so is developed to a stage to allow the client to go to procurement to a main contractor. And that's as far as it's taken. It's put out to the main contractor. And by the time it's awarded to the main contractor, now the clock is ticking. You're on a program and you're on a schedule. And by the time we get it, we're so far down the line in the construction program, as you see from the image, that we really can't give the value at that stage because now we're on site and it's all very reactive. Now, in terms of digital construction within our business, we can really gain in terms of rapid iteration with 3D design, and there's lots of really fantastic gains for 3D and for digital and for BIM within our organisation, and that's what we're going for first of all, because contracts are not ready, Ireland is not ready for BIM, and so we have a lot of work to do on how procurement is done, and public procurement, not only private procurement. But I won't pretend to know the ins and outs as to how we're going to achieve it, but there's a lot of work required.
I can just add that myself and Dominic were part of a delegation. We met the OGP recently, and one of the things that's enshrined in the medium-term strategy, which is the next raft of changes in public procurement, is the concept of early contractor involvement. And I know that we got indications from the other side that they are going to trial now early contractor involvement because of the fact that really they're looking at the fragmentation of the industry and where design belongs, where design development actually sits right down through the supply chain. So they're looking at early contractor involvement type contracts, and I would imagine that'll probably extend down into different elements of the specialist tier 2s as well.
It takes you then to the question of design responsibility. And the beauty of a BIM and an open, transparent environment is that it's very clear who takes design responsibility. So you take responsibility for the element of design, which is what we do anyway. We take responsibility for the element of design that we do, which is the technical detailing. So we already take responsibility for that. And sometimes it's disproportional responsibility. It's not reflective of our contract arrangements, if you know what I mean. So the process will open up all of that, and design responsibility shouldn't be a concern because now you're in an open, transparent, visual system that everybody knows who took responsibility for what element of design. And that's part of the difficulty, I believe, in contracts. Who's taking responsibility here?
Yeah, I'd agree with you to some extent about that. The thing that you see actually happening out in industry is, let's just bang it all into a big Revit model, whether it works in that or not, and the actual design responsibility is ultimately lost as to who owns what part of it, because many people can actually, in those situations, can tamper with other components or will move other components, and it gets lost. Whereas where people should be using is proper BIM, IFC4 views, things like that, to be very clear about it, and to go with that type of integration, to have a proper IFC approach to it, much more like akin to what the Nordics already do. That will deliver it, will provide that, and will provide the certainty of it. Otherwise, you do end up with uncertainty and problems. Anyway.
Okay, guys, any more questions, or we're going to wrap up this part of the last one here? Yeah.
Very interesting and well-delivered presentation. And my question just is, if as a specialist contractor you're in that supply chain, you're both supplier at one stage, but on the other side you're a consumer of from the downstream side. Is there any lessons learned? Have you brought people on from that side, these smaller players? Have you been able to drive them? Like you can describe benefits to them that are understandable, but if they don't have the wherewithal to come with you, they may be stuck there. So I wonder, have you been able to bring people on, or?
And that is the difficulty, bringing people along. And that's where we're at the stage of, you're going to have to take responsibility and ownership for this. You're going to have to get upskilled and you're going to have to get knowledge. Otherwise, the decision is no longer going to be yours. So you either take the digital decision and transition with us and with everybody, or you're no longer on the bus. And that's the reality. That's not even a threat anymore. That's facts. That's what's going to happen. And it is difficult. And it's nobody's fault, only your own. If you know, so it's very much about behaviours. We need to make sure that people accept that this is their responsibility. Now, in terms of our supply chain, in terms of our specialist contractors down the line, we do have a lot of work to do, and it's cost prohibitive for those guys right now. And so we have a lot of work to get those guys upskilled. In terms of our supply chain for suppliers, we also have a significant amount of work. There's a world of opportunity in terms of being able to collaborate with our suppliers, and so that we can take orders from our model and send it direct to their manufacturing system. So there's no no requirement for them to manipulate any of the orders that we would send in. So and again, for our suppliers to give us data, to give us the objects that we install in a format that is suitable to BIM. So there's a world of opportunity to be explored from that side of things. And we're ready and willing and more than able. But it's really to get people engaged. And to some of our suppliers, we would have very significant suppliers and significant players in the market. It's a big task. It's a pretty mammoth task because they provide a hell of a lot of products. And so for them, it's a big task. But we're slowly but surely, we are getting there.
Okay, guys, last question. Go ahead.
Antonio, mine is a question and observation, if I can. Both nice presentation. I completely agree with you, Georgina, when it comes to the fact that BIM level 2 is a process, and therefore, before even we start to think about Revit or ArchiCAD or the software that we decide to use to apply, is definitely is not for everyone. As you said, people have to take responsibility for their task, their activity, and I completely agree with this. Another observation with Sarah, I completed a master 3 years ago in UCC. In a sense, I was lucky, if I relate to it, because the professor Menzel from Germany introduced actually Building Smart as was part of one of the module. And what was funny, if I can say, at the time is that the industry was not ready for it. If I was saying something that I say, what is about? So be innovative, sometimes it can go, it can be negative in a sense sometimes. So yeah, I think I was glad now to see your presentation, see that actually is something that actually got, the next step is being publicized and how do you say, promoted to the industry, and hopefully I will be able to have the opportunity to use as well in the industry. So well done, yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you. All that's left to do, if you would show your appreciation for the first panel, please, and then we'll swap. Just maybe give you a chance to have a brief comfort break for maybe 2 or 3 minutes while we just change over panels, okay? Start back again in 3 minutes, guys, just before past.
Yeah, this is 16, this is 24 columns, standard. It takes 12 to 40 minutes to do the test. This is a project, acknowledge of as level next to you. This is not level process. I think having a break like this is
Okay, guys, we'll kick off again. Want to take your seats, please? Thank you. Okay, now, at the last CitA event that I was at here was really interesting because I think the thing that I said was great. It was, we were talking about projects that were actually just happening across the wall in Toronto Business School. It's great to see projects. Although it was also great to see people actually realistically maybe reflected how things were operating on site. And you could see even that not everyone was coming at the same speed, and perhaps client expectations and how the contractors were dealing with the project was very interesting to see how the actual project was being delivered, and very honest and open sharing. So I'm looking forward to the same type of open and honest sharing coming from our project team that we have next. So I'm going to introduce Craig Yard is going to kick off first from Borough Happold, is the project technology leader. And then we've got Michael Murphy and Simon Trishler from BAM. And they're going to be talking to us about this very, very special project that they're all doing in an international context that shows you the capabilities of Irish companies, I suppose, that are working abroad. Okay, Craig, thank you.
Good morning, and first of all, thank you to CitA for this kind invitation to come and present to you today. The project, as you'll see from the initial slide here, is rather unique and complex and challenging. And the great news is that actually what I'm going to be telling you is a bit of a success story. And it's a success story for a number of different reasons, which we'll touch on. And one of those especially is the fact that our contractor on this project is BAM, who bring with them a wealth of BIM experience from right here in Ireland. I noticed earlier that there's actually a sort of fact page in your folders on the table. So really I don't have to tell you anything, just read this and that's you good. But there's some really great information there. So the first thing really to say is that this is a project designed by Killer Design Architects, who are actually based in Dubai. And it was actually part of a competition win. As it says there, completion mid-2019. As you may or you may not know, in Dubai at the moment, everything is driven by the Expo 2020. The World Expo has been held in Dubai in the year 2020. And pretty much every construction project in Dubai has that deadline that it has to be complete by the Expo. So myself, I'm Craig Garrett from Bureau Happold Engineering, originally from Scotland, as you might have guessed, but been in the Middle East for the past 8 years, and the last 3 of those being specifically in Dubai. I've been really fortunate in that time in the Middle East to have worked on what I consider to be some of the most complex and iconic projects in the region, and some of the photographs that you see here. In the top right-hand corner especially is the Louvre Museum in Abu Dhabi, which has actually just recently opened to the public. And I've been very lucky to be along there as a visitor, and it is quite stunning if you ever get the opportunity to go there. In my current role at the moment, I'm actually operating in a sort of information management services role. And what that's letting me do at the moment is actually to take the experience that we've gained over these really complex projects and go out and talk to groups like yourselves and in the industry and share experience, and that was mentioned, you know, this idea of sharing experience. And it was great, even with ACB earlier, it's all about sharing that knowledge so that others can learn from it. The great news for us is that as Bureau Happold, we recently won some industry awards in the Middle East. And for us, that means the world, because it's actually the industry acknowledging the level of expertise that we have within BIM in the region. So this is just a quick video to let you get a sense of the project. So the Museum of the Future is the project of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the leader, ruler of the UAE. It currently sits right on Sheikh Zayed Road, a very famous road in Dubai, in front of the Emirates Towers where the Prime Minister's office actually is. The facade is covered with Arabic calligraphy, which is a collection of poems that the Sheikh has written himself. But the real challenge is the calligraphy is actually the windows. Again, 3D modelling used throughout, as you would expect, but it does let you visualise the project in a way like we've never really been able to before. In this case, understanding the complex shapes and spaces inside the building, of course this curved architecture, has been critical. Very unique structural design, and of course bespoke and unique facade which will clad the outside. The museum is not a traditional museum in the sense of artefacts, but more will act as an exhibition space for innovative technologies to be displayed. So this is the project team as it existed at the design stage. The Dubai Futures Foundation was the client, which is really the Prime Minister's office. Miras, who are the developer, a very famous developer in Dubai, who used AECOM as their cost consultant, and ourselves, Bureau Happold Engineering, as the lead consultant, with Killa Design as the project architect. And a wealth, of course, of disciplines, as you would expect, many of which were supplied by Bureau Happold ourselves, including some that you wouldn't necessarily think would be working within a 3D environment, for example, like the landscape architecture. What we're going to do today is briefly talk about client, consultant, contractor. So I'm sure you've seen this image before, but we've cut it into 4 quarters. Unfortunately, we don't quite have the operator in place yet, so we won't really talk about that today, but we will talk about client, consultant, and contractor. Now let these gentlemen introduce themselves.
Good morning. Thanks, Craig. Very brief introduction. Just we've been set up the other side of the story, and Craig is going to take you guys through the design aspect as well then, and we'll hop onto the contractor later on. But my name is Michael Murphy. I'm an operations manager with BAM in Ireland, and I'm joined today by my colleague Simon Trischler as well, who's a deployment specialist for ourselves. So big thanks to CitA and to the CIF for inviting us along to present what is already an award-winning building. It's not even finished yet, and it's already winning awards. So we're very excited about it. I think when we started bidding this project, when we were offered the opportunity by our international division to assist them with the BIM delivery, we were very excited about that as well. So we piled as much energy and enthusiasm as we possibly could into it. So again, similar to Craig, very proud of some of our achievements. You can see this particular building also won the AC Excellence Awards at Autodesk University last year in 2017. So it's a building that even Autodesk themselves are all over, and again, it'll be exhibited in AU London next week as well. So looking forward to that. So you can see the type of projects we're currently working on: National Children's Hospital, Microsoft Place, Boland's Quay, the Courts PPP. So we have a wealth of BIM delivery experience, and this is something we were very keen to bring to the international division within BAM, and BAM Ireland is recognised as a centre of excellence for BIM delivery within the whole Royal BAM group as well. So it's fantastic to have them come to us looking for that assistance as well. So again, a CGI, and what I'm going to run here just to give you a brief introduction as to what life was like for us at the beginning and type of things we would have done. You can see, you know, one of the submission articles was, of course, a 4D simulation, giving an indication as to what this is all about. So again, just another value-added benefit, of course, of this model was the fact that we could run 4D. So we ran multiple co-planning sessions across this with our planning teams as well to ensure that we had the most robust program in place. So, you know, BIM was the tool, it was the hammer we used, but lean construction application was really the methodology that was driven into this process to get the right type of approach for BAM and to give our planners, you know, the security that they felt the program would work and was legitimate. I mean, when you look at this frame, it's when you take the skin off this building, you can kind of get an idea how it stands up. When the skin's on it, it almost defies logic in some ways. But the complexity around the temporary works of this building is you know, world class in its own right, because to get this building to stand prior to it actually being completed is quite complex. So an awful lot of thought went into that. As Craig said, you can see the complexity of the Arabic writing on the facade as well. I mean, this is a simply incredible facade, and the first panels are landing now, and they just look absolutely incredible. You know, so an enormous amount of hard work went into, you know, thinking about how this building was going to be put together from the start. So, tight program, nothing easy. As you say, everyone wants everything done 20% quicker, 20% cheaper, a whole lot. But that's the minimum level of output would be required from ourselves at this point for buildings of this kind of complexity. So you can see where we are at this point in time. The jump shutter is just about up. The steel frame is flying along behind it far quicker than we had anticipated, if I'm being perfectly honest as well. We're really getting through that. And again, as Simon will run through later on, in large part, you know, thanks to the laser scanning and the type of accuracy that we're using out on site to make sure that when they go in, they're in the right first time. We're not having to go back and look at it. So the technologies that have been applied here are really assisting us on site to rapidly deliver this particular building. And there's another image that's just taken last week as well, so you can actually see we're up further again at this point, and the concrete works really have to kind of speed up to keep up with the progress so far. In terms of our team, again, we sit main contractor below Pure Havel Engineering. Some of our supply chain, I really, you know, couldn't overstate how competent our supply chain are. You would think, you know, possibly there'd be a lot of work to do there. These guys are world-leading subcontractors. And BAM, as an international construction company, would look quite strongly at some of these companies in the future as well to consider the type of work they can do. They are exceptional. And I'm not just saying that, they really have surprised us. And thanks to our supply chain here, this has kind of made the delivery of this building a bit more straightforward. You know, Eversendai, Transgulf, these guys really know their stuff. So, you know, really, really happy with the supply chain that's there. You know, delighted to be working with them as well. And there's not much effort in trying to move them along. They're kind of dragging us along in some instances as well. So finally, I'm going to move back onto the client-led section, which Craig will take.
So, the first part of the story, the client. A knowledgeable client, absolutely. We're really, really fortunate that this was a client who knew from the outset what they wanted. But not just that, they actually were going through a transformation process themselves internally, like so many of us all are. We're developing what this digital landscape is that we're working at. Miras identified that initially they needed some help, and they actually went out to Autodesk Consulting to get that help, before they then set up their own internal BIM team called the Miras BIM Office. And the guy who we worked with very closely was a BIM manager called Anthony Lapierre. But the great thing here was, again, he was a guy prepared to look at things a bit differently, but he was very open to discussing and collaborating at a level that we've not really seen before. So when the employer's information requirements were written, the client, not only were they able to tell us what they wanted, they were able to tell us why they wanted it, the format they wanted it in, what they were going to, they literally knew everything that they wanted to do. But the great thing was they were very open and honest and collaborative about how this document was put together, and actually allowed us to input into what the content in that document was. So it wasn't this sort of book that you were being hit with, you will comply to this. It was very much a collaborative approach. But one of the great things was that what's normally not in these employers' information requirements is a lot of this stuff. A real sense of how you should really behave, a collaborative approach, willingness to discuss. That's not normally what things we associate with our clients these days, but that's exactly how this client was prepared to develop the BIM implementation in this project. And they were very much, they understood that they didn't have all the answers. And what they wanted to do was to draw on the experience of the other people who were coming to the table to make the project much more collaborative. Now, one of the, I'm sure you've seen this as well, but one of the things that Anthony used to draw as a way of getting the message over was these sort of three triangles. And we're all too familiar with this in our industry. As we go from stage to stage, design to construction to operation, we have this handover. And quite often at that handover stage, we have this massive drop-off in information. And why is that? And it's because we don't have joined up teams, so there's no trust in that information. Your contractor has never seen the design information before it gets handed to them to deliver. But actually what happens is, if you can introduce that contractor to the design team, and they actually work together to make sure what is handed over is what the contractor wants and needs, then you have a very, very different picture. So one of the things we ended up with is that the client wanted this handover of information to only increase as it went through the process, so that there was no loss, there was no drop-off in trust and information and data that was being shared, and it was very much a seamless. Now, this is quite different thinking. This is not really quite often how our contractual industry is set up to do. You know, we're not really like that. We like things to have, you know, you finish your job then and you hand it over and then the next guy takes it. This is a different way of working. But it worked for us. So Bureau Happold, now lead consultant. So we come in with this client and we have this project to design. So we have a very large design team spread globally. These are Bureau Happold locations that were mainly involved in this project. And you can see the kind of numbers that you're talking about, and that includes the architect, it includes the client, it includes all these people, and they all have to be managed and they all have to be working together collaboratively. Big team to organise. But at the centre of that, from a BIM perspective, we had three people. We had a client BIM manager, we had an architectural BIM manager, and we had myself on the design side. And that was our little team at the beginning, 3 people. We met every single week. We talked through every single idea that was being put in that employer's information requirements. We created our BIM execution plan from that, and everything that went into that document, we discussed and wrote in there together. And what a difference that made. It was so refreshing to actually sit with a group of people who were only interested in the well-being of that project and the BIM delivery of that project. So the documentation was very much developed with everybody in mind. It wasn't a case of the client dictating what was to happen. It was about the client agreeing with everyone what was to happen. Shared experience, because of course we're all coming from different backgrounds, we're all bringing different experience. Why wouldn't you want to share that? Common sense approach. Too often, our documentation that we are producing, these BIM manuals that we're getting so used to seeing now, have language and and discussion in them that half the time we don't even know what they mean. We had this approach where it was things had to be written so that you could actually read them and understand them with a common sense approach. And if it wasn't something that added something to the project, then we actually took it out. And this again was a really great way to approach the job. Now in Dubai we have a mandate, we have a BIM mandate. It's not the greatest in the world, it's a single page, but it's there and it mandates BIM. But one of the great things is, of course, we have the UK level 2. So for projects in the Middle East at the moment, especially in your tier 1 sort of contractors, consultants, it's basically the best of the UK level 2 that we're using. Because that is the standard, to be honest, that the majority of the world is just about to be in ISO, that the majority of the world is using. But because it's not specifically mandated, we can actually take the best of it and maybe not necessarily do it all. So we kind of have the best of both worlds. To manage a big team like this, we needed a really robust common data environment, CDE, single source of truth where we could store all our information, that everybody could access it in the cloud at any point, at any time, all revision controlled and all the good stuff that we're used to. When we started the project, we actually had Dropbox, but we realized very, very quickly that wasn't going to work. First thing is, of course, it's not even HAS 1192 compliant, so that had to go. What we did do is we actually, as the design team, put in place ProjectWise. But that was a first for our company to put that in place. But it gave us the kind of functionality that we needed for this project. This was the key thing. And even although our client was using Aconex is probably, I would say, the #1 document management system in the Middle East at the moment. I'm sorry, a bit dry. But this was great for us, and our whole design team was in that environment. There's a few other things. The nature of this project, the nature of the fact that it is the museum of the future, there were some specific challenges put on us. It wasn't enough just to build this building. If this was going to be a building that was all about innovative technology, we had to be seen to be putting innovation into the actual design and construction of the building itself. So that was a challenge for us as well. Not only the fact that we had to deal with all the iconic architecture and, of course, the unique facade. So for Bureau Happold, what this meant was an exceptionally high level of computational engineering. Now, by that, what I mean is, visual scripting tools like Dynamo, Grasshopper, these sort of things, driving our design decisions, connecting our authoring tools to our analysis tools. And only through being able to use some of these technologies that we have available to us now were we able to analyze and optimize the structure. The structural diagram is obviously something that benefited from that process. Now, if you can optimize a structure, first and foremost, say for the number of nodes in it, and you can get that number down, we're saying 40%, then that's construction costs that you're getting down. If you can optimize that structure for the steel that you're using, then that's material cost you're getting down. And if you can optimize that again for variations in that form, deviations in that form, then again there's some real savings to be held there. But what visual scripting and what computational engineering lets you do that you could never have done before is it lets you optimize for all these three things happening at exactly the same time. And this is a sort of morphing type algorithm that you would see. I haven't got the video to show you, unfortunately, but so basically what's happening is all these three elements are being optimized at the same time. You could never have done this in a manual simulation. But this lets you come up with the optimum structure. And the benefits when you then rationalize across all three of these are massive. Massive. Our contracts more and more, our documents more and more are becoming contractual. EIRs, BEPs, these kinds of things are now being written into the contracts. And that's great, because what that means is that that mandate or that instruction from the client, it's not just some sort of high-level words. In there are actually the documents that they want you to work to. In this particular project, there were some real things that were done differently. The first one I want to talk about is model ownership. And interestingly, we were talking about, intellectual property and ownership earlier. Our client wanted the ownership of the models to change. They wanted the model that was created at the design stage to be passed to the contractor, and that contractor to take that model on. That's not how our industry normally works. But believe me, when you are focused that that is what you have to do, it changes everything. It really does. But you need a contractor who are prepared to take on that challenge. Because we all know to take on board someone else's work and then progress it forward as your own. That's a real big change. And that intellectual property changes with it. Now, when Bureau Happold created the design initially, and we passed it over to the contractor, obviously at that point it is still the model as was received. When I say model, I do mean multiple models. I don't necessarily mean a single. But the point is that, yes, that model is going to change as your steelwork supplier comes on board, as your MEP contractor comes on board. They will develop the next generation of those elements in the model, and they will subsequently be replaced. And over a period of time, yes, ultimately, that design model will be filtered and potentially may even well disappear. But that's not the point. The point is that you have to manage the model changing ownership and that intellectual property changing from the designer to the contractor. One of the big things that the client wanted to do is he wanted everything in a cloud platform that he could view at any time, and he wanted all the design meetings, all the contractual meetings, everything to be driven from that software. Our solution that we used was BIM 360 Glue. 3 years ago, when we adopted that product, we weren't particularly happy with it, but we're 3 years further down the road now, and it is absolutely critical and fundamental to everything that happens on site. One of the key things, again, in a change in the way that you have to think about this is every week, all the contractors upload their latest work in progress models. Work in progress models, not models that have been fine-tuned and finished and presented and then you see them. Work in progress models. So now you have to accept that it's work in progress. Obviously, not everything will be finalized, but this was a client requirement because they wanted that at any point when they went into this model to look at it, they wanted to see the latest thinking of the design. They didn't want to be out of date by a month or short of the official version that comes next week. Everything is work in progress, up to date, every single week. And that changes everything as well. I was really, really lucky with working with this client when we got to the stage to select the contractors, because we actually went about that quite differently as well. So the first thing that we did was that we went out to the 6 contractors and got them to give us a BIM implementation up front. We got these 6 documents back, and we realised, of course, right away, as you would expect, the 6 of them were completely different, because every contractor had produced their own standard document. But we're a client who has to assess these companies against each other. What we did is we went back to the beginning and we created a standard template that we then re-gave to each of the contractors and asked them to submit their BIM documentation based on the template. When that came back, we had the easiest job in the world to compare those companies. The easiest job in the world. It changed absolutely everything. We had BIM interviews. We actually had the contractors come in with their BIM teams, including some of the people in this room, and literally had a BIM interview with the team of the people who were actually going to deliver the job. Great face-to-face, one-on-one interviews where we get a chance to give them some questions, they get a chance to ask us some questions. And then we talked about this open and honest handover, this change of ownership of models. And to begin with, there was a reluctance. To begin with, it was, you know, that's not the way we do things, I'm sorry. But again, the great thing was these are demands that the client put on the project from the very beginning. And that, I believe, is the importance of a knowledgeable client. If they define what they want and they involve everyone in producing that, then I believe the outcome is much better. Now we're going to go into the contractor portion.
Okay, thanks, Craig. Now on to the easy bit. Just to give you a quick overview, I suppose, of our approach at the start and how we went about this, because obviously we had major logistical issues in a sense that we weren't physically present within Dubai. You know, we were a remote bidding team assisting our international division, but a large aspect of this, you know, became very obvious to us very quickly how serious the client was about BIM. So that was fantastic, number one. The question is, if we're successful in the bid, how do we go about it? So you can see the number of people from our side specifically just working on the BIM delivery of this project. We have 4 individuals based in our head office in Kildare. We have our startup BIM manager, Greg Byrne, who is now working, he's the BIM manager in the National Children's Hospital. So we're very fortunate to have Greg out there for a 3-month period lifting this project off the ground, and we owe a lot to himself for that because he did a fantastic job of getting it up and going. And now we have Derek Burke acting in the role of the BIM manager and Owen Ryan as a BIM coordinator out there. And these guys work daily, weekly with Craig and the team and the BAM team as well, moving the BIM delivery aspect of it forward. So, you know, it took that many people just to bring this one aspect of the scope to life. And for the most part, most of those people are still involved in some way, shape or form on a weekly basis in terms of keeping an eye on how this is working. When we drive it on further, you can see as we expand the team out how that all then effectively works. So, you know, it's important to get the plan right from the start, understand the lines of communications, who talks to who, what the roles and responsibilities are. And I have to say, you know, the guys on the ground there, they've really managed to carve it up quite well themselves. They understand what they do. They are self-starters as well. They're in a foreign country, you know, for our 2 guys who are based in Dubai, that's the first time there, but they've settled in quite well, thankfully, as well. And of course, that would be a concern when you send them over, is will they be homesick? Will they fit in? You know, things have gone well. So there's other considerations for us, apart from just, it's not like we're heading down to East Cork to start a project and someone can go home at night. They're leaving their families behind as well. So, you know, a big ask. But they've been welcomed by the team there. They have other expatriates as well from over here in Ireland, and it's like a big Irish job in some ways as well. So, you know, it's and they're also bringing that cultural aspect of people socialising together and having a proper team kind of spirit as well. And it's something that, you know, we discussed that a couple of times over the last couple of days, is how positive the atmosphere is around the job. And there's a lot to be said for that. But it's rare you get a job where people get on so well. So it's nice to be involved in that and to have, you know, such a good working relationship with the design team and the client as well. When we move on and we roll back around to the morass information requirements. So what was really interesting when we received this bid was the fact that we had to start pulling it apart into a language that we probably understood. So we were sitting there with a suite of documents in front of us, weren't entirely sure what was what. We assumed this was the employer's information requirement, you know, and you'll see other documents which kind of have similar, they have different names but similar approaches to other UK BIM Level 2 standard templates. So it took a bit of time to consume it. We were pulling things apart, trying to figure out how we would respond, what was the best way to do it. And as Craig said, we ultimately made the decision that we would respond with the, you know, standard PAS 1192 Part 2 an execution plan response. and which was rapidly given back to us, and we were asked to go again with another template, and I wasn't at all happy about that. But Greg went out, we responded, and you can see life is nice and easy for Craig in the end. As he said, it was a dream once he got his template response. But it caused problems for us. But look, it was worth it in the end. So yeah, a really, really knowledgeable client. Really refreshing to see the kind of level of detail they had gone on to. They had really applied that smart approach, you know. They knew what they wanted. They were being quite prescriptive in an awful lot of ways where it mattered, and they were being open but direct in other instances as well. We want this type of approach. It has to be cloud-based. We want these standards to be applied, etc., etc. So it was nice not to be in a position where we felt like we were making up our own approach. They knew how they wanted this team to operate, which is great. The execution plan itself has been a genuine collaborative effort, probably the most collaborative execution plan we've ever been involved with. Again, really refreshing to have such an engaged client and design lead as well. I mean, a shout out, of course, to Anthony Lapierre. You know, he really assisted in sticking both parties together, and it was great to see. You know, you had 3 people sitting down, really working through it. And if it was stuff there the guys didn't like, they were open and said, look, we don't like that approach. Can we look at this a different way? We could have a debate about it. Nobody was falling out. It was just a good old-fashioned debate, and we got the right answer, I think, in the end. And of course, beyond the project mobilization, it has continued to change as well. It's revisited at least once a month where we look at, are we actually doing what we're saying? If not, why not? Should we be doing it? Will we just change it in the text to match what we're currently doing on site? So this is very much a live document, moving and changing all the time. And you can see by the number of revisions alone, even on the first holding page, that it has literally been revisited the whole time to be reflective of what's going on. Another good example, you can see on the right-hand side, like the level of development, some good guidance, some really good guidance as to what was expected from us. And there's not enough of that in the industry right now. You know, it's a bit sketchy what somebody means when they say LOD4 or LOI this. You know, quite often they don't know themselves, and they're not defining what the COBE output might be. So you're in a vacuum when you're bidding work. And at the end of the day, we've got to price and deliver. And it's tough, you know, but this was one of those rare occasions where that wasn't the case. It was very clear what the client wanted. And I might add, a really pragmatic approach as well. It wasn't, we want the most detailed looking geometry. It was, we're interested in the information. The geometry's got to be fit for purpose to assist the project move on, but we're not going to come down too hard on you guys over that. We're going to be pragmatic about it, which is great. So, you know, it allowed us to get a strong sense of what had to be delivered, and critically, within our own internal management structure, we could go and say, look, you can see the amount of information that's required here. This is the type of prelims we need in here. It wasn't like there's a big gap, nobody knows what's needed. We put our guy on it, you know, it was like we definitely need at least 2 people on the project. So we could be clear ourselves from the start. On the left-hand side then you have the contractor's model development specification, kind of similar to a model production delivery table in some ways. So this will give you an idea of the type of stuff we were going through. A CMDS, that's an MPDT. I think it was like acronym wars going on in our office at one point as to what meant what. But, you know, all the fundamental aspects were there, which is really important. And there were no gaps in that tender documentation from our point of view. We couldn't find any fault with it. So that was refreshing and gave us a good opportunity to get the price right. Beyond engagement, we obviously carry a kite mark with the BSI for UK BIM Level 2. And, you know, we spent a lot of time talking with Craig and with Anthony and the team on site about how we were going to go about this and what BAM's approach would be. So, for the most part, most of these documents have been applied. You see Craig had an image of the BIM protocol up earlier on, so all of our subcontract supply chain are bought into that. They're all moving forward with it. But, you know, these documents and the guidance documents are viable when it comes to how we go about our business now on the project. So the project has slightly evolved to be a bit more BIM Level 2 centric than it would have been in the start. But like that, it's kind of like a la carte. We're taking the best bits and the stuff that's not adding any value, we're just parking it, because there's no point in just doing it for the sake of doing it. So, you know, I think that's, again, another pragmatic approach been taken by the teams. You know, part 4, which isn't up there obviously, but that's been used right now as we're going through the process of trying to understand how we define an asset and how we move that forward. As Craig mentioned, we don't have an operator in place just yet. So it's a bit of a guessing game as to how we best approach this. But we're going to go through a process over about the next 4 or 5 months as to try and get the right answer for the client. Type of tech involved, again, no surprise, lot of Autodesk products, Tekla, Katia, Leica Geosystems on the project as well. You have Celebri, Building Ops, we're assuming is probably going to be used in the end. We're using Synchro. So it's the who's who of the technology people are here. They're all adding value in their own way. This is such a complex project. You know, open BIM based project, or, you know, software tools have to be used. I mean, there is literally no straight piece of plasterboard in this building. This building is hyper complex. The facade, when you guys eventually see the facade that goes in, is a world-class facade. You will never see anything like it. It is just incredible. And how it's been produced, I'm actually astounded by it myself. It just looks amazing. But, you know, it's thanks to products like Katia and stuff like that, like Geosystems, for helping us get us all set out in the right place as well, that these things are possible. But these are tools, that's what these are. You know, you still need fantastic designers like Craig and his team, and, you know, competent contractors to go and actually deliver these buildings. But these are the tools we use to assist us in that process. And I personally don't think that this building would have been possible only for this technology. As Craig mentioned, the type of hyper-analysis and iterative design they've gone through has actually made the delivery of the project way more straightforward for BAM on site, because this project has been very cleverly thought through by the design team. And I think there's a really key message in that. You know, this project works well because it's well designed. We're not making stuff up when we hit the site, suddenly realizing we have to do something a slightly different way, or we need to use a different type of facade, or whatever the case might be, or steel isn't going to work. It works. It's very well rationalized, it's consistent, it's well sequenced. So for us, we are turning up and we are just building it. We're not having to do much, you know, design development on the fly. This is a video that's going to play. So these are just some images actually from the Synchro model. You know, and again, logistics is a big thing for us on the site. It's a tight site. It's adjacent to the main public thoroughfare. You know, there's a main road right outside the door as well. And you can see some of the images from the Tekla frame and how it's pulled together. So really, really nice to have that level of input from our specialists as well. And, you know, the virtual construction model, which again, as Craig said, we took the design model, we further developed it, and this is kind of, you know, the evolution of that as you see it before our eyes. But these are all coming from Glue. That's live, yeah, it's adding massive value. In its defense, it's there, people can get into it, they can see what's currently going on. They understand what's IFC, you know, what's been issued for construction, what's currently work in progress, and what's been shared. We're applying the process of a common data environment to get it against it, and everything is well codified. So some very, like even the tunnel itself, traveling from one part of the building to the next is quite complex. It's not simple. It's a very, very complex structure. Concrete works, again, not straightforward. Not many walls are vertical within this building, so an awful lot of complex concrete been poured there. You can see the actual calligraphy within the facade as well. I mean, that in its own right. I mean, if I had to sit down and figure out how to get that model, I don't think I'd know where to start. It's an impressive piece of again, you bring it all together, you know, and this is live. Guys are working on it as we speak in Dubai. Again, what's really impressive, the model is everywhere. It infiltrates every aspect of what the team on site do. And you guys might not appreciate it, but this next picture says it all to me. That individual sitting on the left-hand side there is our project manager, Sean McGinley. And this is a serious project manager, right? Roll the clock back 5 or 6 years from now, I couldn't possibly have imagined him sitting there using a tool like this, but it is his go-to tool on site. And those in the room who know Sean know what I'm talking about. This is what he does now. He sits down, he looks at his model. It's adding value for him. So that cultural journey with people like this, it takes time, but he's on a project where he simply couldn't be without that model. And I know when he lands back on these shores, he'd be all about, he'd want a model. He'd find it difficult to be in a project without a model, you know? But again, that ease of access through a tool like Glue is really, really important, breaking down that barrier. Like Navisworks would be your next step up, but you kind of have to be a bit more competent to use something like that, whereas with Glue, you dial in, it's basic stuff, you can navigate away. So, you know, it's great for us to see that it has been used day in, day out on the project. It's adding value, it's informing the design as we go. And I'm just going to pass over to Simon now, who's going to talk about how we would actually bring some of this virtual modelling, you know, to life on the actual ground as well. So thanks.
Hello. So this is the part that we don't normally see in BIM. This is something that we don't see very often. And this is something that in Ireland we see only at the highest level of FDI investment. So we only see this example here in the likes of the semiconductor and the pharma work. And this is where we have a subcontractor that's using the digital model, not only for their design purposes, but also to set out their information. And this was part of one of the 2 trips that I made over to Dubai. When I was over in Dubai, I went for 2 reasons. The first trip was over to help set up the digital site management system and to talk about the spatial requirements. And we went over and sat with the subcontractors and the trades, with the design team, with the BEP in front of us. And we decided on how we were going to quantify all our tolerances, all our setting out procedures, and everything we were going to do to ensure that this was going to work out properly. And this gave us massive insight in bringing the information back, the spatial information, back from the site, back into design, so people could understand that things were in the right place and that everything was going to work out. And one of the big things that we used to do this is because we have such a complex structure, because we have such a great curve on it, this building itself is 120 meters long, it's 80 meters high. There's a lot of, beside a very busy road, beside very heavy high buildings, beside an active tram line, it's almost impossible to get the survey control in place to justify that everything's in the right place. So we use laser scanning technology, which we've used here before on multiple projects, to capture the information. And this information then went back in, and it allowed us to capture the progress of the construction as it went by. One of the things that we have, and one of the conditions that we don't suffer from here in Ireland, is temperature. In Dubai, the temperature can swing by up to 50 degrees in 24 hours. And when you're building a large steel structure, the movement of that steel, I think is it a millimeter per 2 meters or something like that, is absolutely colossal. But by using laser scanning on a daily basis, we were able to capture the shapes and use that to show in the design meetings, in glue, with the design team, with the subcontractors, with the steel workers, everyone that was involved, how progress was going, where there were issues, where there had to be changes, and so on. And it's very much a real-time process. So movement is very, very quick on this. We can see what's happening, as they're doing it. And it allows for changes to be made. It allows to ensure that things are in tolerance. And it allows confidence in the design team that the design is progressing as it should be, or the construction is progressing as it should be. So it's a very, very iterative, very, very live process, using the best technology and the local team to support everything that we can do on site. Here we have a picture of the laser scan and model combined. The upper one here, the large one, is the beam that was poured in 1 day, or 2 days, I think it was 2 days. It's basically the same diameter as a container, so it's 3 by 3 meters, and it can consist the whole way around the building. The mesh, the steel mesh in that is so thick you cannot put your hand through it. There's so much steel in that. And that was poured in the space of maybe 24 hours. But all that was modelled up, laser scanned, and compared to the model. And you can see on the other side, the holding down bolts that were also laser scanned. There's a point cloud at the bottom, and there's a point cloud model at the top. So for all the steel work that goes around that ring beam, all the holding down bolts had to be correct, because steel, unlike timber, doesn't bend, and has to fit in to match perfectly. So everything was validated as it goes up. We're validating all the steel work, all the holding down bolts, everything for the facade, everything for the mechalec, everything is being validated to ensure that it all fits in the right place. And this is all being fed back into the BIM model. It was all defined in the BEP, which is very unusual, but it leads us to have a construction process that's more complete. We have complete ownership of the cycle of the building. We understand more about what's happening, and we can make changes if they're needed, reflecting what's happening on site and not what we think is happening. So you can see here's another example. The next one here is a very quick slide. It's more steel work and more guys out validating. And you can see just over here, just on, I can put the mouse over to it, just this little steel here. That steel is modeled there. I don't have a picture of it, but that steel was modeled, was constructed incorrectly. So there's a slope on that steel that shouldn't be there. That should be much, much gentler pitch. And when you compare that to the model, you can see the rebar coming out through the top of the concrete. Now, it doesn't have any impact on the project because there's a cover on top of it, but it showed very quickly that there could be a disconnect when the site guys are going out to install rebar, to make the rebar, a small little miss, looking at the wrong drawing or looking at the wrong information, can have a large consequence on site that isn't picked up very often. But because we're able to see it, we know what the impact was, we're able to move on without worrying about it too much. The other reason that I was out on the site was to implement the site management system for the collection of data, for the quality assurance, for safety on site, and also for the management of assets on site. So we're using BIM 360 Field out in that project as a construction tool. It's being used to capture all the checklists, all the issues, everything that's being raised on site, and to feed all the information back into the glue model and to feed it in reports back to the construction of the design teams. It's also going to be used as part of the asset collection tool for FM at the end. While we don't know who the final FM operator may be, by using the likes of the BIM 360 application, we're able to capture all the asset information now. So as we build the building, as we install the steel, each piece of steel is an element. It has all the checklists attached to it, it has all the issues raised with it, has all the construction photos attached to it. So at any time, the FM owner will be able to look back at the life cycle of that piece of steel, or the panel, or the MEP, or anything that may be there. So it's a complete cycle, it goes the whole way around. So it goes from design, into glue, into field, site data is captured, it's fed back into glue, and back into the model where required, so we can use filters to show progress that's being made. Same slide. So what we're doing is we're identifying the assets early on. This happened at the very start of the project. They knew what they wanted to have. They knew where the air conditioning units were going to be, where the power was going to be, where the lighting was going to be. The design was very complete. So by able to identify the assets and create our asset model, we're able to create the equipment sets that when we go out in the field, we can capture the relevant information. So when we go out and we look at a boiler, or we look at a pump, or we look at a light switch, or an air handling unit, or whatever it may be, we can track the status of that object. We can track and say, this object has been delivered to the site. It's been put in its right location. It's been installed. It's been commissioned. We can capture photographs of it to show where it is and how it's working. And we can show all the information that's relevant to the facility manager of the operations. And we're also doing that for the likes of the panels. So we're tracking the life cycle of the panels. So as the panels are being structured or manufactured, we put a barcode on it. It gets shipped to the site. We scan the barcode. We know it's on site. We check the condition. We take an image of that to make sure it hasn't been damaged. We move it to the right location. We install it. We complete the checklist to say it's been installed. We take pictures to show it's been installed correctly. We note there's no damage to it, or if there is any marks with what's happened to it. And all the time we do this, a dashboard is appearing for the project manager and for the client, showing the progress of those panels, showing the progress of the frame, showing the progress of whatever it may be. And that allows them to see how the build is progressing at any given time. But because we're doing it at the very start and throughout the progress of the life cycle of the project, we're also able to capture all the relevant information. So these are some slides from some of the schools we completed, because they're not in the museum yet. But we capture all the information, scan information, red line information, photographs, all the information is there to be captured to allow us to show what's happening at what stage of that element. And that's all come through from the model. It's gone through the whole design process, and now it can go back into that process. So when we assess that an object is at a particular stage, be it installed, commissioned, ready for use, whatever it may be, that information can be fed back through glue, back into the Revit model, and a filter can then change the status. So when you look at the model as a designer, you can see the status of an element, whether it's been installed, delivered, commissioned, whatever it may be. Okay? That's about it. Craig has one last slide, which is all about the most important thing. Okay? This is the one thing that has, I would say, undoubtedly created this project more than anything else, which is communication. And Greg and Paul and Craig and Michael and myself, this is the one thing that this project did extremely well. It may have been fraught at times, but it was always open, and it was always ongoing, and it was always there. And it was a very, very pleasant place to work, despite the temperature. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, we're running a little behind time, but we've still got 5 minutes left for questions. I have one or two that I had written down that would be interested. Just, Craig, maybe from your perspective, what was really interesting was obviously you had a very, very informed client. So the EIR was probably very advanced before they went anywhere near the market. But perhaps there was a lot of extensive development of the BEP between yourselves and the contractors. What sort of timeline was involved there? And And how do you tie that in, perhaps, to maybe a more traditional style contract?
Yeah, as I said, obviously we're really lucky in this case. I mean, the development of these documents happened as we went along, really. You know, we developed these as we went, or the document existed at the beginning, and then we, you know, as things did, we changed it, we adapted it. There was a comment made that if we discovered that something that was written in the document was actually being done differently on site, then we changed the document. The document had to reflect what worked on a day-to-day basis. So it wasn't that there was a big delay really in the development of these documents. They were all done at the same time. But this idea of communication, you know, literally weekly meetings. In fact, when BAM came out to Dubai initially, I think we had a week. I think we had a week where we did nothing but sit in a room and talk through these documents. But the great thing was that we had everybody in that room. We had the client, we had the architect, we had ourselves, we had the contractor, and it was about producing something collaboratively that everybody was happy with. That's not an easy thing to do, but what you get if you do that is everybody's actually happy with the documentation. You get to the end, and what you're doing is practical and it works, and we're actually doing it for real life on the project. So, you know, it's
just another basic question. Now, I'm not sure if it was actually the original intent, and this is what the guys would have priced, but the innovation of design. Is that something that had gone out to the market? The market had all been asked to take account of that?
Yeah, that's a really good one, because I thought the client did it particularly well. In fact, we were just talking about this yesterday. So the way that it worked was that the design, let's say that the design wasn't quite complete, if you like. You know, there were still outstanding issues, there were still outstanding coordination that needed to be done. That hadn't all been finished at the handover stage. But part of the reason of having this collaborative approach and having the contractor on board to discuss this was we actually had discussions about all these issues that were outstanding. And the comment or the clause that the client made was that in the price that they bid, they had to allow for all the known issues at the handover. And the reason for that is because the client didn't want the contractor coming back after the event looking for variations for things that they already knew were stuff that needed to be resolved.
Schedule of known unknowns.
But it was being really honest. It was actually people being really honest. It was people prepared to stand up and say, this issue still exists and needs to be resolved. Take account of it in your price by all means. But don't come back later and ask for a variation if it's already something that you know is an issue. That's quite, I mean, that, again, I thought that was a very different approach.
Yeah, it's very open book.
Very open book, very honest, yeah, absolutely.
Sean, can I just say, I think a couple of lessons could be learned from that approach as well. Again, it was quite pragmatic from the client, but the rules of engagement were clear from the start that we had to price for that. And, you know, for us, coming from the industry we're in, it was a bit alien. It was like, how do we price for that? But we did. And, you know, it wasn't scoffed at by these guys either. And it's set it out clear from the start.
But you have knock-ons from that as well. RFIs are kept to a minimum. Yeah? And when RFIs, we're not saying there's not changes, because there is changes. You know, there's maybe things don't work, and these are legitimate RFIs, legitimate claims, legitimate variations. The client maybe asks for something to change. So it's not that there's not change and there's not variations, there is. But it does keep the RFIs to a minimum on the site as well, because the contractor is basically resolving issues that existed as part of the process of developing the final solution.
I would say, undoubtedly, when you look at your programme, you've been hugely helped by the client.
Yes.
The fact that the client was so informed and set such a prescriptive wish list out. I mean, in the AR, obviously, I mean, you could add probably 12 to 18 months to that had you not been, and all the anxiety that comes with
and the thing is too, I mean, I'm saying this is a real success story. I mean, equally, I've been running projects at the same time that don't have that same collaborative environment, don't have that same relationship between the parties. and the difference is incredible. So it's quite annoying actually when you know what works, and yet we're still running projects in some cases in an environment that we know doesn't work. You know, I can only hope that the industry will get better at that. But the good thing is we know what does work, and hopefully we can work towards making sure that all the projects are done like that.
Very good. Guys, any more questions?
Yeah, I have a quick one here. I suppose when we look back to the heady days of Latham and Egan and we look at collaborative approach and the industry's perspective of that back in the day, we didn't really believe that we could get to potentially the place that you're talking about. And I suppose just looking at that collaborative approach, you know, having your list of known unknowns and potentially, you know, the cost associated with that. And then we look at Georgina's insights into potential, you know, implementation of BIM through the process and the collaboration involved there, and the associated costs. I mean, Georgina had indicated, you know, 30% savings across the board in implementation of BIM. As a course manager, project manager, you know, is this the sort of thing that you've seen on this project? Working with BAM, that the collaboration has led to those kind of savings, and were they specifically pertained to your known unknowns? I know that's a big question.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's maybe even an easy answer. The project's on budget and on time. I don't know that I've been able to say that too many times, to be honest, but that's the position that we're in. Now, whether that's a reflection of this process that we'll put in place, I believe it is. I believe it is. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not that there aren't problems. I think there was another approach that worked well. I mean, we all still have contracts, and you know, everyone is still working within a very contractual frame, and we have our known deliverables and everything else. But I think what happened here was that the BIM team specifically almost sort of set themselves aside from that. Yes, the contracts are all in place, but we're more interested in having a successful project. And we were collaborating maybe in a way that was even maybe outside of what our formal contracts were telling us, but we knew it was right in the sense of coming together to do it in a better way. But I think the problem that sometimes is this contractual relationship that we have gets in the way. And I think when people allow that to happen, the BIM part of the project suffers because you don't, you know, it gets in the way of this very collaborative approach.
Could I just add to that as well? I mean, the cost saving of this project, it was competitively bid. So from our point of view, when we read the documentation and we assessed the risk, and we go through a stage gate with our group company in the Netherlands, you know, the risk on this project was actually far less than you'd realise because of the amount of effort in the development, the design, and the honesty in the way it was approached actually from the client's perspective. They weren't expecting us to carry buckets of risk, and they weren't, you know, it wasn't a situation where they were not allowing us to price risk. It was quite fair and equitable. So, you know, that project is on time, it's on budget, but it was a competitively bid budget. It was significantly cheaper than our next competitor.
And one other comment, and we talked about it earlier, is quantities, taking quantities from the models. It was written into our BIM execution plans that the cost consultant, ACOM, would take their quantities from the model. But we actually had to sit with the cost consultant and understand exactly how they did that so that they were getting the right quantities from the model that they needed. But what that meant was that the price that was being estimated at the design stage was actually really pretty accurate because that information was coming from the model. It wasn't being manually lifted from drawings. In the majority of the cases, it was actually directly coming from the model.
Great presentation. There were a couple of comments during the presentation about picking and choosing stuff from the BIM level 2, PAS 1192, and taking out the stuff that didn't have value. Can you give some examples of things you feel don't add, that's currently in the PAS 1192, but doesn't add value?
Yeah, like security requirements, for example. on the project. Like when you look at the requirements in level 2 BIM around security requirements, it's actually quite onerous. But again, we were like, we're not too concerned about that. We have a practical approach to that, so we would park that extremely onerous exercise. And again, from another one, for example, would be the development of an asset. So we have a very pragmatic approach to how we develop assets. I mean, BAM ourselves, through our PPP projects, have a very simple formula as to how we define an asset. And that's something we're feeding through right now. So we don't need to go through that lengthy process of beating it down this way. So we were trying to be clever where we could be clever. And I'm not saying in all instances was the right thing to do. You know, maybe time will tell. But we're trying to bring that experience. It's a bit like last planning. You're trying to bring as much experience to bear on the process you're going through. And it works for us in our operations with our FM company. And I've no doubt it will work for, you know, any other FM provider, be it a museum or a school or a court, whatever the case might be.
Interestingly, the client had a huge list of specifications that they wanted used on the project. PAS 192 being one of them. But the reality was they were just this list that someone had created with no understanding of what any of this meant. And actually, I believe it was Greg who's at the back of the room. We sat in that weekly meeting that lasted a week, and we went through those specifications point by point. And you know, actually, when I read half of them, I didn't even know what they meant. You know, the language and the way that they're written, you know, they're so hard to understand. And that's what, you know, I meant about this common sense approach. If there's something in there and you don't even understand what it means, you know, what use is that? Uses that to you, you know. So very much it was a case of, and certainly in the case of BAM, they brought a lot to the table from their experience of projects that they've already done, especially in that asset management side, which we just adopted. Brilliant, absolutely. You know, it's existing experience, you know works. You don't reinvent it again, just use it, absolutely.
Maybe time for one last question.
Thank you. Great presentation, everybody, and thank you for sharing such a lovely project. I'm Emma Hayes from Digital Build Consultants. I just wanted to pick up on one of the points that you made, Craig, in your element of the presentation. You spoke about model ownership and how for this to be truly successful, the model needs to be handed over to the contractor for the construction stage. And I 100% agree with that. But in terms of the practicality on this project, how did you deal with RFIs and technical queries post-contract award?
Well, the design responsibility still lies with the consultant. You know, we still retain the design responsibility. So questions or RFIs or whatever that come up in relation to the basic design, you know, still went back to Bureau Happel to be answered. You know, it wasn't that necessarily BAM took that over. But certainly from the model handover point of view, the physical sort of ownership of things, you know, that was what shifted. But the design responsibility still lay with Bureau Happel.
Sorry. Just to clarify, did you continue with a design model then as BAM developed the construction model?
No, that was
so the line in the sand.
Absolutely what the client did not want to happen. Yeah.
So how did you respond to RFIs and technical queries if you didn't have a source of the information yourselves?
Because the thing is, we are embedded with these guys. You know, we're working with the site team all the time. It's almost like it's not their model; it's everybody's model.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe that's the way to think about it. You know, maybe rather than them and us, it's ours. You know, maybe that's more the approach.
Yeah.
And that was the comment that was being made about. You saw the site foreman, then you saw the project manager, then you saw the design team. Doesn't matter who you are or what company you're in. We're all using one model to resolve the issues. We actually have an interesting initiative at the moment. We're looking to, again, this challenge on Museum of the Future. We're looking to use more VR. VR is the big sort of, you know, the real gimmick at the moment. What can you? So we've actually challenged ourselves to adopt VR more on site. And our challenge is that it's not to be adopted as a gimmick, it's to be adopted for a practical reason, and we hope that that practical reason is to reduce the time it takes to resolve RFIs. If the use of VR can let people understand the problem quicker, discuss what that solution has to be, and then solve it, then for us that's a practical reason to adopt VR, not just, oh, it looks great with a headset on, So that's the kind of challenges that we're putting to ourselves, actually. I mean, it's not that that's even in the BEP. We're actually now challenging ourselves to do things differently.
Okay, guys, so I'm going to wrap up just by thanking all our speakers this morning, from Sarah having travelled all the way from Germany to give us what was a great insight into the work of Built and Smart and DOIBIM. Thanks to Dominic for taking the time to give us an overview in terms of where the industry is going and how construction companies themselves need to be prepared for where the digital transition is going to be in a couple of years' time, and what our expectations are in terms of other stakeholders at government level. To the two contractors in BAM and both ACB for sharing their own experience, where they are, how far they've come. It's incredible, really. You look at, you've got a small enough team, relatively speaking, when you consider the responsibility and the roles that you've undertaken. So it's a great credit to your company, how far you've come so far on that journey. Last but not least, I'm going to maybe ask Alan Howard just to give us an update on where the series is going. Thanks.
Actually, I might use these glasses here because I don't know whose they are, but I'll put them on here. Okay. So many people to thank for the last 5 or 6 months in our digital transition series. So much positivity this morning. I'm going out of here really enthused on my way to Galway this morning. I just talk about the speakers this morning. We really had quality speakers this morning. If you look at one of the words within CitA, it's the alliance. And I very much see the digital conversation we've had this year, the Royal Institute of Architects of Ireland, the Engineers Ireland, the Association of Consulting Engineers in Ireland, and the Construction Industry Federation. We see these people as part of a partnership approach for digital in Ireland. So Sean, as many of you know, is a great proponent of digital, including his other responsibilities, and he was foremost to the setting up of Construction 4.0, and also sits on the National BIM Council with me. So again, Sean, thank you so much for your skills in chairing this morning. It's quite symbolic this morning to have the President of CIF, but also the Chair of the Construction Industry Council of Ireland, Dominic Doherty. So that's quite important because that sends the signal out that we are working together to fix this and to create a more innovative industry. The CIC have worked very closely with CITA and the constituent groups in the CIC to design this series, not just for 2018, but for the next 4 years and into the future as we go through this transitional program. So it's very symbolic. And Dominic, you mentioned the Centre of Excellence. That is the prize, that construction will at last have its own Centre of Excellence to drive the future. We can see what's happening in the UK with their digital centre in Cambridge and so on and so forth. So this is really what we want to see in Ireland, and it's going to take some time. But I just wanted to share with you a conversation I had last night with Stephen Hughes, who was en route to London to meet John Hunt, who were preparing a document today to present to a number of departments in Ireland. Many of you may not be aware, but we have 7 departments in the Irish government that look at construction. So it's quite complex, yeah? But the overriding message from Stephen this morning is we are making progress, and hopefully as we get to the term of 2018, there'll be some form of announcement, some sort of white smoke in that regard, so that we can really implement this roadmap. But I gave you a sense earlier on that there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. This roadmap was launched on the 7th of December of last year, and I think Enterprise Ireland have to be applauded because they put it out there without any funding. But
All the dates on this roadmap are start dates. We don't have end dates as such. But what's encouraging is that progress is being made and that hopefully we will see an implementation team in place and budget allocated for 2019. So it was also very refreshing to hear ACB, and particularly Georgina's constant reference to the MBC roadmap. And I'd say that if companies should look at this roadmap, because if you look at the pillars, companies need leadership, yeah? Companies need to use standards. Companies need to educate their people, and companies need to start working in a different procurement context. So, you know, even the fact that Georgina referred to that Canoster roadmap and that Canoster image that we put into the roadmap, by the way, every company should be looking at this, you know. So, great message, Georgina, and thank you for your contribution. Sarah, what can I say? You did fantastic. I met Sarah in Paris a few months ago when she presented at Building Smart International's Paris meeting. It was the wettest 4 days I've ever experienced, but it was great for Sarah to come over. And I think Germany needs to be applauded in that they were the first out of the traps with this open BIM certificate. And many countries are going to flow. It's also very symbolic that David is here from Building Smart UKI chapter, and David and I and Geraldine Larkin of NSAI sat down last night and we started to talk about Ireland's contribution to UKI and the idea of rolling out this digital individual certification in Ireland. It's extremely important that we do this because we've committed to open standards in the roadmap. So again, more work being done on that. The BAM presentation was really very inspiring. I get a sense that BAM have almost gone through that transition already, and you're out the other side. But a lot of companies are already starting to do this. Paul, you and I spoke maybe 18 months ago on a telephone conversation, and you told me you had won this project. And I knew that at some point we'd hear more about this project. So wonderful to have Craig over. We know Michael and Simon very well, some great people, but that sense of kind of positivity really came to the fore for me. So, great presentations. So, thank you for turning up this morning. You know, we've had 350 plus people attending our series in 2018. Thank you to BAM, to Diatech, to Graphisoft, LES, Murphy's, Celebri, Topcon, and Lyco Geosystems. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do this. So, what's next? We have a meeting in September, October, and that is the message, that's hopefully going to be the public sector piece, because this piece of procurement needs to be looked at. And of course, many of you will be aware that the Office of Government Procurement are working extremely hard to build their digital team so that they can start to look at reviewing the contracts and specifying what's required on public projects as we go forward. So we've already had conversations with people like Mary Flynn of the Dublin City Council, Rob Moore in the Grange Garment Project, etc. So we're going to start putting that piece together. 2018 has been very much a digital message, hasn't it? Like you think about, say, DigiCon conference in March, which is the CIF conference. We had the SCSI PropTech meeting in the Royal Hospital there, I think it was in April. We have a Lean Construction Institute, Lean Construction Ireland conference in November. And of course we've got our conference. But all of this is good. You know, CitA doesn't own digital. CitA is part of the overall message. And I think that's important going forward, that we collaborate with all of these people who feel that digital is important for their sector. So I just wanted to mention a few things. On the 19th of June, in the Red Cow Hotel, CitA are meeting as many training managers as we can possibly meet. And the reason for that is that we want to try and talk to those managers about you know, addressing their needs. And also we want to talk about, you know, online training, because this is something that we think companies are going to need. And we're also going to talk to them about the Open BIM certificate. So maybe we'll send out a different message, but if any of you are interested as maybe owners of companies, or you have training managers, please send them along to that meeting. So Last but not least, I just wanted to talk about our next event. Could we run the video? Yep. So, one of the big messages behind this roadmap is that digital is not necessarily just about BIM, that we need to move beyond BIM and start looking at other technologies. So what we're doing is we're organising an event, another event, the 8th and 9th of November in Crow Park, which is the CitA Tech Live 2018. So I'm just going to run a short video on that, and that should wrap things up this morning.
Join us in Crow Park on November 8th and 9th for CitA Tech Live 2018. It's your chance to get hands-on experience with the latest construction technology guided by tech experts. Smart cities and Internet of Things, reality technologies, robotics and automation, 3D printing, drones and geospatial technologies, BIM innovation and information management. CitA Tech Live will explore how these themes will help drive your organisation into the future and save you time and money. Register your interest now at citatechlive.com/register.
Okay, so it's another tech event, but it's an important one for us. CitA always try to finish the year out with a large event, so it's important. And this is an event for the vendors in particular to showcase their products. So we've started to build our keynote speakers. We've got 4 confirmed, is it? We're hoping to get 8. We're bringing these people from all across the world, and it should be great. So a date for the diary. So thank you so much. Hope not left anyone out. Enjoy the sunshine, and we'll see you in September. Thank you so much.